Hello, I'm Tim Moody, President and CEO of Pan Global Resources. We have a new, well, not so new, copper discovery in Spain, and we have a bunch of other targets that we're drilling currently. So.
Good to see you, Tim. And I'm going to say welcome to London. I know you're here for loads, probably more often than me, but welcome. Now, you're at the conference next door. How are things going? What are people talking about? We've
had some good conversations. Certainly there's good interest in the resource sector and also in new exploration stories. So there's some new faces for us. That's why we're at the conference, trying to get ourselves better known in Europe. So.
Right. Okay. And of course you're doing copper.
We're doing
and
copper.
A bit of tin. Yeah. So it's you're kind of at the epicenter of what people are really interested in at the moment. Is that kind of getting any kind of response in terms of what's happening next door as well?
Certainly the people that we've spoken to are there because they like copper.
Right.
So yeah, that's been our impression. But there's a lot of other metals and companies there
right.
with other stories.
Okay. Now, why I wanted to drag you away from the conference, and thank you for turning us. It's nearly the end of the day.
Yeah.
The clock says so. You've had a long day already, so we're going to keep this one short and punchy. But last time out we talked about the drill program that you've got going on, 20,000 meters. It's it's a lot of work. You've got the money, you're capitalised to do that. Mm-hmm. You're sort of in control about how you move things forward. But looking at 2023, just in simple terms. What are you going to deliver? What should people look forward to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I should say firstly we've had 3 drill rigs operating since the beginning of the year on 3 different targets. Mm-hmm. So, essentially we've been drilling non-stop for 3 years. 3 years. 3 years. So that's pretty good really for a junior to be able to keep that going. We expect to have news flow from those soon. We've been progressively completing the programs on each of those targets. Right. So I guess the market's going to be hit with a lot of news from us at some point.
But are you kind of withholding any of that? I mean, have you got any results back yet?
We are continuously getting results back.
Right.
We're just about wrapped up the short program we had planned at La Romana. Yep. I expect that the results from that program will be the first out. Mm-hmm. We're about 75% through the drill program, the planned program, 20 holes at Escacena, a target in the north. And we've just finished hole 3 on another target called Romana Deep.
Right.
We're waiting for results on that. In fact, they may not be far away, but we've got a pause on the 4th hole.
Right.
We had planned there. We'll decide whether to drill that.
What would that be based on?
We're just having a fresh look at the geophysics and the geology, because the 4th hole could be quite a deep hole. So before we do that, we want to make sure we use all the information. So, and we're tight with our money. Yeah. We don't drill many deep holes as Pan Global. So.
Okay. So let's go. Let's talk about what we're looking forward to, like a catalyst, I guess people used to call it. What are we looking forward to in 2023?
Yeah, so I think this is really going to drive, as I said, the really important news for this year, and hopefully these catalysts are going to start to kick off soon. There are 5 as I.
Okay, I like it. Easy to remember.
Yeah, so 5 if I lump it together. So the first would be the access to the farms to the east and to the west of our discovery, La Romana discovery.
Right.
That's a big deal. To the east we have a big target called Bravo. It's a big gravity anomaly, looks just like La Romana, where a maiden discovery was made.
Can you explain that? Sorry, when you access, should you just jump on in a car and take your rig there and off you go?
This is all privately owned farmland.
Right.
So we've got access agreements over vast majority of the area, but there are a couple of farms where the relationship is good, but they're less keen on us coming in and making a discovery or doing exploration.
Right.
And this is a common response. Concern that we find something and they may lose their farm.
Right.
So this is a normal discussion.
They lose their farm. How does it work, actually? This is really interesting, actually, because people look at you and go, oh, it's not a mining. Just like, and you've got to know how to operate in and around, urban populations, and not urban, but what I mean, farming populations as well. So what does that conversation look like? How does it work? What are the terms?
Well, the terms will sometimes vary from one farm to another. Depends on the nature of the terrain and what you want to do in that farm.
Okay.
But sometimes it's all because there isn't a familiarity with the exploration process.
Okay.
For most companies, most exploration is unsuccessful, to be honest. So discoveries are rare. So that's the one thing. When you've got a big farm, you have to say, well, yes, we might want to explore all of the farm. Yeah. But even if we find something, the portion of your farm that might be required for a mine might be quite a small portion. And also that the exploration process does not necessarily have to interfere with their normal farming activity, their ability to make a living off the land.
Okay, so that's what you're explaining. So I find this fascinating because these are the little bits of conversation no one really discusses, right? So you go and say, educate the farmer and say, look, here's our process, and if you'd be kind enough to give us access, it'll be minimal impact to you because chances are most explorers need to drill a lot of holes to kind of make a discovery. But when you say use a phrase like, "Oh, they might lose their land," if they did, would it be their choice whether they left?
Yeah, so that's
sold. What do they get?
And this is a discussion that's not restricted to where we're exploring. This is a common discussion. In Spain, there is a process called temporary occupation. So there is a process where the government can actually intervene. So so you actually have, as an explorer, as a company that's been permitted to explore in that piece of ground, you have the right to go and explore there. Right. Okay. So generally, we'll try and reach an agreement, an access agreement with the farmer, and the last a last resort, if we need to, is to use this. If we can't reach an agreement, that the government can intervene on your behalf. Yes. Some sort of thing. So
you've gone and got your permits to say we've got a subterranean access. Yeah. And the farmer owns the surface rights. Yeah. It will presumably owns the surface rights.
Yeah, it's the surface, but
and at some point there's a discussion and negotiation between the two of you, saying if you come to some agreement, off you go. If you can't quite, then the government might step in and say, well, look, both parties can get to a point where there's an agreement in place where this is reasonable.
Well, the government could help push that process along. So we certainly would prefer to have a friendly, amicable agreement always. But we do have that temporary, the government process in our back pocket when we need it, which can help push the discussion, help the discussion. Yeah. So the exploration is one stage. Then once if you've got a mining permit, then you're permitted to mine as well. So it's a different discussion. There's also a process for that as well. But even if you've gone down that process, you still try to negotiate. Well, that's been our approach. Absolutely. So we try to do that always.
So back to the access.
A non-confrontational.
No, absolutely. That's the outcome. And I think a lot of conversations around ESG for the last 2 years or so. People trying to communicate with local interest groups, with First Nations, with farmers, whatever. You've got to do things the right way. Because, mining needs to be held accountable, and I think companies that do things the right way will ultimately win. Can we come back to the access component? So access for what two? Well,
so the two farms. One to the east is on a geophysical target, looks just like Romana, a very big, prominent geophysical anomaly we call Bravo. To the west, this is a big farm in the context of the area we've been exploring. Access to that farm would give us access not only to the potential extension, near-surface extension of our discovery, and we have the continuation of the geophysical feature that we were drilling initially. Goes another 800 metres or more.
It could add.
So near-surface could add materially to give us maybe 2 kilometres of strike. So that's a big deal. But that access to that farm also gives us access to 3 other big targets in that farm area. So so that opens the door to additional potential
that's
discoveries.
A big deal. So give us a sense of timing on that. Are we weeks away, months away, years away?
We're certainly a lot closer now than we have ever been. I'm hoping it's weeks.
Right.
It's this year for sure. That's if I hold my hand. That's what I believe it will be this year. will it be in the next couple of weeks or will it be in the next couple of months? That's what I can't say.
Okay.
What's most important is we negotiate something that's acceptable for both parties.
And you started the process.
Yeah.
Okay. Catalyst number one. Catalyst number two.
Catalyst number two would be the drilling that follows on in those farms.
Right. Okay.
So most importantly, perhaps our highest priority is to confirm or test that potential to extend the near surface copper mineralisation at La Romana.
Okay.
Yeah, perhaps another 800 metres. Yeah, that gives us 2 kilometres of strike.
So do that in terms of either dollars, euros, and metres.
Yeah, so we're looking at probably initially 20 to 30 holes.
Right. Okay.
And then perhaps another 20 or 30 holes to get it to a resource stage.
Right, which is I think at the end of this conversation, that's kind of the ultimate goal here, right? So can you, again, with how much of that is funded?
Yeah, so I would say the first 20 to 30 holes of that, right. we could push it further if we sacrifice drilling on other targets. We're trying to do both okay. at the moment, but we'd certainly that's our highest priority. We've got something already, something to build on, and we can. It's such an obvious thing. Near surface copper is what.
So that's La Romana growing.
Yeah.
Okay. Number three. I'm trying to do this in bite size that I can remember. So
number
three.
So number three would be the metallurgical test work, of which there's really two components to that. One is the copper study, which we're nearly. I heard last week we're still on track to have the copper study completed at the end of this month. Mm-hmm. So hopefully something to report on that early next month. The other component is the tin metallurgical study. That will come later. Right. So
later this year.
Yes, this year, and we're already just deciding where do we need to drill another hole specifically for metallurgical work, or can we use the existing drill holes? So tin's a little different. We can recognise tin. There's a zonation, metal zonation in the deposit. So we need.
But on the network, I mean, obviously it's a big mining area, right? It's a big mining region. There are lots of comps around there. Yeah. So, what's your expectation, or what should our expectations be in terms of the network?
Well,
it's hard for you to say specifically, but I mean.
I think what we're looking for is some confirmation of the early indicators we got from the petrographic work, the initial orientation type metallurgical study we did last year, which just gave us a guide as to how to design a more representative study. Okay. So. These results, I'm hoping going to confirm that we've got low deleterious mineral and metal content. Right. That's a big deal.
No, that's not.
Because most of the other mines in the belt have to deal with that in some way or other. Another thing is, other things like pyrite content or the grade of the concentrate and the metal recoveries. These are all things that are worth dollars. In terms of things that push your cut-off grade. But also, it may say, well, this ore that we may have could be something that differentiates from the others. In other words, higher quality. Yeah. If we can, that would be an ideal result.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of important, certainly in terms of discussions with if you do toll milling as
something
as
like
part
that,
of the decision. Because they want to try and understand the economics sooner rather than later before they...
Yeah, or at the smelter.
Or at the smelter, right?
Yeah.
So there's lots of people wanting to work out margins. It's all about margins. So that's important. So it's again timing on the network. You said I get the tin later this year. So for the copper went how quickly?
The study should be finished at the end of this month, so next week.
Right. Okay. So that's super. That sounds super exciting because that we can comp that.
And it's really important. That's dollars to us. It's in terms of what the potential, valuing, helping to value the deposit tells us something. So
I get it. No, that's and it's soon as well. So I think that's really good. I guess the fourth, one of the remaining must be what you've already referenced is in terms of exploration, because you talked about allocation of capital elsewhere. So
it's the potential. It's the drilling on new targets. The potential to make a discovery hole on any one of the new holes.
They?
So we've been drilling we've had 3 rigs operating this year on 3 targets. La Romana, the discovery, the others at Sarcita, another one at Romana Deep, which is a sort of down dip extension of La Romana. But we're also looking at other targets, like a target we call Cañada Honda. We're also, if we get access to the farm to the west, we're also looking at 2 other targets, Barbacena, another one called Pozzo. And then I mentioned Bravo. If we get access to the farm to the east, it's really exciting looking target. We don't know what it is. It's completely buried, blind. We don't. It's great looking geophysics, but we've got to do the work to drill that. But
so in terms of order, because obviously you look at the chances of success and you're going for the highest down to the lowest, why wouldn't you? So what does that look like for you? In terms of
I think the highest priority has to be that western extension of La Romana, extending the deposit. That has to be the number one priority. It's near surface copper mineralisation.
Yeah.
We know it's open in that direction. The old Roman mine workers that gave the name of the target sit over the top of the geophysics there. It looks really attractive.
Okay. And do you how do you work out internally when you guys are like sitting chatting, in terms of the percentage allocated to each of the targets? Because targets sound exciting, but targets and anomalies don't pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
You've got to find those pounds. So how do you allocate the capital?
Well, to some extent, we also have to work with logistics with farmers and access as well. So crops and so on. So we try to keep the rigs turning. Any one of them could deliver something. The size of the geophysics target doesn't always mean it's the best. But nevertheless, things like Bravo, that was a really attractive looking target. So. We do try to rank them based on the number of sort of indicators that coincide. For example, if it's a gravity anomaly with an old mine working on the top of it, that's a pretty good thing. But if it's also got a big geochemistry anomaly, or we've got a helicopter EM anomaly with it or something, so the more of these coincident indicators, it starts to give you more confidence that there's something there.
Are you starting to see patterns in terms of what you should be looking for?
Yeah, well, we do. We look at and then we look at alteration when we're drilling. We look at.
But is it kind of homogenous in a way in terms of the likelihood of success based on some of those characteristics? Right. Okay.
I wish it was. So of course it's not that easy. Unfortunately, it's you're looking at different cover thicknesses. You're looking at different geometries potentially. All of those things.
We better go to number 5. We better go to number 5.
Yeah. So number 5 is that we're constantly doing work throughout the area, and we're all looking at other opportunities. So we are generating new targets. We're seeing a new target emerge called San Pablo off to the west. We're still working on that. And there's some other.
Where's that? Are we still in Spain? Or
still in Spain, still in the same. No, we're still in the same same general. Well, we are looking outside as well. But if we're going to take something else on, we think it's got to be something that's really going to be that makes sense. We do have the other project, the Águilas, as well, which we still like. We still think that's a great looking target. But it's lead zinc. Copper for us is.
I think copper's obviously the romantic story of the moment. So just on the sort of geography, jurisdiction, all of that. Obviously, in Spain, big mining district. We've referenced that. Other mines operating in and around you, and you're down in that kind of southwest corner. Historically prolific and recently prolific too. What I guess what I'm trying to get at is a lot of junior companies come on here. And in difficult markets, they need to come up with some angle. They need a story. They need a new, shiny new object to point people at. Right? You guys raised money at the right time last year.
So, the year before last, actually.
Was it? Yeah. Well, sorry. Apologies. Yeah. So so that was kind of smart. That was smart then, as kind of put you in control of how you go about doing things. Will we see any of these kind of cute moves from you in terms of whether it be mergers of equals or acquisitions using stock and kind of slight distractions, as it were, or are you very sure about what you've got and you think that this is good enough for someone to get a hold of? Maybe not you. You've indicated to me in the past that you know where you are at. You're a good team of explorers who can work this thing through to some sort of development phase. Resources good. Or do you feel that the market is just there's no end in sight? In which case we might need to have a few new
Well,
stories.
I'm still optimistic that things are going to turn for the better. I think if anything, well, my read at the moment is that perhaps things are flattened. Hopefully, they're not going to get much worse than they've been. You might see a little bit of a bump around, but sooner or later things have got to pick up. But they always do. Copper. Europe, all of these things. There's a lot of other things going into the macroeconomic situation.
We're in a good location for that.
But sooner or later things have got to turn around. And I'm hopeful. Is it 6 months? Is it this year? I hope so. It's
kind of interesting actually. I've had a few conversations with groups here at these battery mining conferences. From all through. It's where people want to be, and obviously copper is the epicenter of that. But the feedback we're getting is that groups in Europe are having no problems with any kind of debt components and much further along the curve than you, as it were. Not concerned about that. And equity is pretty readily available too. And anything that's battery EV related is getting a good listening to. But my big takeaway from this conversation is this big industrial complex, which is the automotive industry, the anode makers, the battery manufacturers. They've already pressed a big green button. They've left the stall. They're off and running and at the races, and they don't change direction for the vagaries of the markets. Where how sentiment is that day of the week, that week or that month. So those drivers are still there. I guess it's a question of how companies like you fit into that mix. And you've talked about 5 catalysts, but the big thing that people are going to be looking from you is the resource. And are you still aiming for the end of the year?
Well, I think it depends really how quickly we get access, particularly the farm.
So you want it to be a good number, not just a number.
Yeah, well, we could put out a resource today, but if we wanted, we've always said no. It's still open. This could grow materially from where it is today. Yeah, interesting. Let's drill that western extension. Let's understand where the limits are broadly, and then we'll be in a good position. But we're doing everything to make that happen as soon as we can. Whether it's the end of this year, whether it's sometime next year, it really depends a lot on the access to that farm to the west and how quickly we can drill off that extension. But in terms of the other components that go into a resource, the environmental baseline studies we've started. The detailed block models, we've already commenced that. Cost studies, we've commenced. The metallurgical test work we're doing. The next stage of the metallurgy will start this year, most likely, which is looking at the variability, so sampling from around the different parts of the deposit to see if the potential processing route is applicable to all of the deposit, or just we have to modify it for different areas, these sorts of things. So we're progressing on all those fronts, so that when we think we've got enough, we put it.
You come to the table. You're not being rushed. Like I say, you've got the capital to bear to control the pace at which you move. Tim, loved it. Great to speak to you. Good little story building up there.
Thank you.
Right in the middle of Europe too. Not too bad.
Not too bad.